All right, ESPN's Jemele Hill, as you've probably heard by now, suspended for 2 weeks after calling for a boycott of Dallas Cowboys advertisers. Fox News contributor Kevin Jackson and sports business journal NFL writer Daniel Kaplan here on that. Daniel Kaplan, to you first on this. We don't know whether this suspension was paid or unpaid. We do know it's a follow-up to a reprimand before that didn't result in any days away from work, paid or unpaid or otherwise. So I'm looking at this and surprised Disney took the relatively tame approach it did. What do you think?
Well, let me first say she did not actually call for a boycott. She suggested a boycott. She was pointing out in a Twitter exchange that this is one way to put pressure on the Dallas Cowboys. I don't know if 2 weeks is too much or too little. We could debate that. One thing I do want to point out is clearly ESPN and now the NFL. The NFL just had a conference call with reporters in which clearly they're starting to indicate they may change their anthem policy. The president is getting their notice. There's no doubt about that, whether it's ESPN and now the NFL.
All right. That might be the case. For now, Kevin, it is what the policy was. And, of course, there was a great concern among those who rallied around this broadcaster to say that, she has a right to do and say what she said. But to go after Jerry Jones and say what he said, doesn't he have a similar right to do and say what he said? In other words, if you are my employee and you don't stand for the national anthem, you can kneel prior. I'm going to bench you.
Sure. Jerry Jones has skin in the game, pardon the pun, and Jemele Hill doesn't. And, there's hardly any other career you could have, Neil, where you could potentially impact your employer to the degree that Hill has done. ESPN and probably one of the biggest advertisers, the ESPN, are benefactors to that corporation than the NFL. And we're watching the NFL implode because of the antics of people like Jemele Hill. But, she's been doing this for a while. In 2008, I think she made a comment about the Celtics that said something akin to, cheering for them would be like making Hitler a victim. So ESPN knew what they were getting. That 2 weeks ago, she did the statement about the president, which he's still living on the muscle memory that people apparently hate Donald Trump, which I think the America is going to find out that's very much not the case. But look, what we want is sports. We don't want this type of thing. And as a corporation, I think ESPN's making a mistake by not putting its foot down and saying, guys, let's focus on sports. At times, it is political, but let's keep it about sports. That's what the American public is looking for.
But I wonder if it's out of control, gentlemen, now, and the genie's out of the bottle, the financial bottle as well. Advertisers are going to get increasingly anxious, not so much what this broadcaster said, but to be associated at all with this, political hot tub here. And I'm wondering if that's the problem, that now advertisers are going to start feeling the pressure, but not in the way Jemele intended. What do you think?
Absolutely. Oh, absolutely. The NFL had Anheuser-Busch into their offices this week. Last week, it's one of their top sponsors. And as I said, the league just today has indicated that they may pivot on this anthem issue. The owners are gathering for their annual fall meeting next week.
When you say pivot on the issue, Dan, to what? To enforce this idea that players should be standing during the national anthem?
They've not evolved to that point yet, but
they're getting close to that.
They're getting much closer. They just did a call, and it wasn't with all this social justice brimstone. It was, we want to get back to football. We have this protocol.
Then ESPN would feel the heat from that, right, Kevin? And Jemele Hill in that environment not be long for her job.
Absolutely. Look, what you just described has been going on with conservatives for a long time. You've had pressure put on Hobby Lobby over issues around, contraception. You've had issues put on companies like Chick-fil-A and others. And the left are finally beginning to see that people just want business to be business. Look, we don't care about transgender bathrooms, Target. We don't care about social issues, Starbucks. We want you guys to sell us coffee, to make your product available, and we'll make our decisions based on that. Let the free market do what it does. The problem with the NFL is all this social justice warriorship that's been happening, by the way, erroneously based, and with guys who, quite frankly, are not exactly the Pied Pipers of the message when they're multimillionaires who probably would be unemployed or doing something very different than making millions of dollars playing a sport. So how about letting the American public enjoy your product without having to be proselytized to every 5 minutes by somebody like Jemele Hill, and particularly when Jerry Jones, who's an owner, who's got millions of dollars at stake, it's certainly his right to do what he wants to do as an owner.
All right, gentlemen, thank you both very, very much. Meanwhile, NFL owners are considering this rule change that would require players to stand for the national anthem. Again, nothing is permanent, nothing is set in stone, just that has not even been kicked around. But again, what would kick it around and what would prompt that is a financial hit. That's the way these things sort of happen. So in that, Jemele Hill was right. The pinch is always felt when the dollars are on the line. The irony could be it could cost her job, that very issue.